Hello, Milwaukee Bucks fans. Welcome back to another episode of Bucks Latest presented by Fan Arch. As always, I'm your host, Dean Simon. And before we get into everything, please make sure to leave a like, leave a comment down below, and also subscribe. We are not very much on the road to 1,000 subscribers anymore. We have officially crossed that threshold. I can't believe we've got to that kind of point. Thank you to everybody that's pressed that big red button down below to this point. Now, if you want to continue on this journey and come with me on this journey to 2,000, you are more than welcome to do that and press that button down below. Also, turn on post notifications so you don't miss out on future Milwaukee Bucks updates. All right, so first things first. Giannis is good to go, apparently, or at least he will be good to go. Maybe he's not 100% right now, but Doc Rivers and some others gave the clearance that Giannis will be ready to join the Milwaukee Bucks for their first preseason outing against the Miami Heat. And speaking of that preseason game, or at least their first game of the season coming against Miami, Doc Rivers and the Milwaukee Bucks made a certain choice to have the Bucks training camp take place in Miami. And last year, I was reading an article about this. Last year, they said that it took place, I think, in California, like in UC, like Irvine, something like that. But Doc Rivers made the conscious choice to have this year's training camp move to Miami because their first matchup of the year is against the Heat, which I think is very smart. And it looks as though the Bucks will have Giannis in attendance for this first game of the year. I can't wait to actually watch Milwaukee Bucks basketball and cover the entire season for you guys. It's we've been waiting way too long for this, but we're actually here. We got our first bit of actual basketball with the Knicks and 76ers today. And actually, if I can link that game to the Bucks' upcoming game against the Heat, I really, even though we're going to want to see Giannis and all the stars on the court and Miles Turner making his Bucks debut alongside Bobby Portis and the new guys like Cole Anthony and Amir Coffey. I really do want Doc Rivers to be a little bit cautious on the front of playing all the star players decent minutes in this first game of the preseason, because we saw with the New York Knicks that, which it was a surprise to me, because you would think with the new kind of coaching regime coming in after Tom Thibodeau got fired with Mike Brown taking over, that the Knicks would put a little bit less of an emphasis on playing all of their players, their star players, throughout basically the entirety of the first quarter. Like Jalen Brunson and Mitchell Robinson played the entire first quarter of the preseason. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. These guys want to at least kind of feel the pressure, kind of ramp up conditioning wise to actual NBA basketball standards. But it gets to be a problem where you have a guy like Josh Hart who played decently heavy minutes to start the game. In the beginning of the second quarter, he made a wrong turn or something after grabbing a rebound and kind of trying to push the ball in transition. And he went down with like a non-contact lower back injury. Like he twisted a weird way and he just fell. And it was a scary moment. Like, non-contact injuries are always like that. But he did eventually get up under his own power and like kind of limp back to the locker room. But with that being said, I don't want the Milwaukee Bucks to have any risk of copying that kind of Josh Hart injury, where not even necessarily the Bucks superstar in Giannis Antetokounmpo getting hurt, but having a guy like Miles Turner or Bobby Portis or Cole Anthony or Gary Trent Jr. potentially sustain a random freak injury in the preseason. I feel like we have to try and limit these possibilities as much as we can, because going into the regular season, this is going to be from start to finish. Obviously, every game in the regular season means something and counts for something, but you get the impression that, guys usually towards the latter, fourth or fifth of the season, they kind of start phoning it in, going through the motions a little bit. But from start to finish, from opening day until closing night, the Bucks, every single game needs to be a victory, and they just can't afford to have any kind of slip ups in terms of guys, sustaining these freak injuries and missing key games that the Bucks need on their schedule to make a potential postseason run, because this is a year more than ever where nothing is guaranteed with, especially for a roster with Giannis Antetokounmpo on it and, decent players surrounding him. This is uncharted territory to an extent, because you had always figured throughout the beginning of Giannis's prime, and now in the Damian Lillard era, and now post Damian Lillard era, you expect the Milwaukee Bucks to make the postseason every single year, and that they would have the roster to do so. But this is probably the most unexpected or unpredictable year for the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, so they need all their guys healthy. They need everybody at full strength every single night. And while I know injuries are gonna happen regardless, this preseason we need it is imperative to limit as many random freak injuries in the postseason as possible. So, continuing on with Giannis, he was talking a little bit more about how much he truly believes in this Milwaukee Bucks group. And I just, obviously you love to hear this kind of thing from your superstar player, but the detail in which the Giannis is really trying to hammer the point home that he believes in this group because of several factors, because of their young legs, because of the three-point shooting, because of their, believed to be like their potential ability to play well in transition and get the ball moving up the court and even move faster in the half court. Um, for all of these different reasons, Giannis truly believes in this roster to make a deep postseason run. And with all the trade saga stuff happening this past summer, you maybe wouldn't expect Giannis to really be on board with every decision that the Bucks made this past offseason, but it seems as though Giannis is ready to help contribute to this team and help to try and win another championship, and that he has no doubts at all as to whether or not this team could be capable of making a deep postseason run, which, it's not out of the realm of possibility that a team with Giannis Antetokounmpo and great complementary pieces can make a deep run. It's just obviously going to be a little bit more unlikely than in years past because just of course you're lacking that top end talent that you had in previous iterations of this roster. But having Giannis fully believe in this team, it's a great first step to actually, kind of getting the rest of the guys to fall in line with the game plan and truly buy in. And I'm sure that regardless, that's what everybody's feeling is uh, in terms of the guys on this roster, that everybody here realizes the opportunity in front of them and that they're going to compete with the best of their ability to try and win a title. So, uh, second to last thing I want to talk about is just in the last episode, I was kind of going on a little bit of a tangent about Amir Coffey and how he should totally make this team and make the final roster full stop. There's just no excuse for him not to. But over the past couple of days, I've seen both Bucks related media outlets kind of coming out and saying that Amir Coffey could go as far as start for the Milwaukee Bucks on day one. And I've seen other media outlets say that Amir Coffey is still, he's in a position where he's fighting for a spot and it's not necessarily guaranteed. And after, especially John Horst's quote where he was saying that, we have 21 guys and we have 18 roster spots, but nothing is really set in stone. We're still going to have guys fighting to convince us that they should be part of the team, essentially. So those kinds of comments, of course, will lead many to believe that a guy like Amir Coffey might not make the roster, but it's kind of one of those things that you know to be true without anybody really needing to say it, kind of like an unspoken rule type thing, where Amir Coffey should 1000% make this roster. I was also reading up on a couple of things with regard to Amir Coffey's potential fit with the team, and for the people or media members, media outlets alike that are saying that Amir Coffey is the perfect kind of wing that the Milwaukee Bucks need on their roster. Bingo, that's it. That's it. That's the whole reason why Amir Coffey should outright make this team because he has every kind of skill that you would want. Maybe a little bit lacking on the defensive end, but even this past year he improved, and you could look at all the advanced statistics that you want to show that he improved. I believe in his like defensive rating per 100 possessions and defensive box plus minus things like that. But aside from the defense, Amir Coffey was, I won't say elite as a shooter, but he was a fantastic catch and shoot 3-point marksman who was also able to put the ball on the floor, hit a little turnaround in the mid range. His playmaking, he had a career year across the board in terms of his scoring, playmaking, defense, just all around. And there's just no way, especially with the momentum that he's coming into this year on, there's no way that you can even relegate Amir Coffey to, eighth man or ninth man minutes. Maybe eighth man because you're going to have at least Cole Anthony and Bobby Portis coming off the bench to act as the Bucks, strongest pillars of the reserve unit. But at the very least, Amir Coffey is the eighth man for this team playing at least 15 to 18 minutes a game at the very least. There's no real conceivable way in which you could tell me that Amir Coffey is still in the kind of Cormac Ryan class where he's fighting tooth and nail to make this roster. He did what he did last year for the LA Clippers, and he proved without a shadow of a doubt that he is built to contribute to this team. And even before we go on to the next thing, I mean, I could talk about Amir Coffey all day. I've said numerous times that going into this year, he was, or going into this offseason, that he was one of the more underrated potential free agent pickups for any team in the league. And any team that were to have acquired him, it was going to be a super underrated and great under the radar move. And the fact that he landed on the Milwaukee Bucks, it just, number one, it really pleased me, but they need to take advantage of this guy's skill set, especially as he's ascending. He is actively ascending right before our eyes. And maybe, who knows, maybe he's going to be fit to take on even more of a consistent role going into next year, even though he's going to a new system and a new city. But that's just my thing on Amir Coffee. Finally, going to talk about Doc Rivers, mentioning more of the pace and space, getting out in transition. And these are things that I've covered a couple of different times on recent episodes, but there were kind of new quotes or new iterations of the quotes where he was saying that he kind of joked around, number one, about Miles Turner, and he was saying that, oh, Miles came from, he played for Indiana last year and got a couple laughs from the kind of media scrum in front of him. But the Doc Rivers, he wanted to stress that while the Bucks are going to be playing at a faster pace this year, that they're not straight up copying the Indiana Pacers game plan or style. Even though they very well could, because they have a guy with a lot of intel and Miles Turner that could kind of relay certain information on how the Pacers like to do things and what their certain sets are and things like that. And I'm sure he will talk to Doc Rivers and the coaching staff about those things. But aside from being able to take advantage of those things, stealing the Pacers' star center to be one of them, um, Doc Rivers said that the Bucks are going to play with more pace, but they're going to do it their way. They're not going to copy off of any specific team. They're just going to come into it with their own kind of stylistic, idea of what's going on and with their kind of personnel. But the only difference is that, and these are Doc Rivers' words, that they're just going to play faster in transition and in the half court. And one of his big talking points was that just even bringing the ball up the floor in a slow manner would really, really hamper the Bucks' effectiveness in terms of getting into their sets in the half court, and it would kind of muddy things from the jump just by getting the ball across half court at the 17-second mark on the shot clock. Then you have to kind of like rush into your actions and get things going in a pretty, you know, significant or insignificant amount of time, and you need all that time to kind of get into a rhythm and set up off-ball screens and duck ins to the basket and off-ball cutting and all these different factors that go into the Bucks playbook. The simple message though is that taking up the ball, both after a miss and after a make, needs to be super super quick. It just, everything needs to be heightened in terms of a speed perspective, and so that's something we could look forward to coming into next year with the Milwaukee Bucks. Even if the on court product doesn't necessarily convert into wins, at the very least, we're going to have a very fun and exciting product in terms of Milwaukee Bucks basketball, because they're going to, at least from the talk from Doc Rivers and John Horst and even Giannis, that these guys are going to be flying up and down the court with reckless abandon. So I'm really excited to see how that fares for the Milwaukee Bucks in 2025-26. But anyways, oh, you know what? Before I go, I want to talk about something that I have in here, talking about the copycat trends of the league. Basically, that was in reference to Doc Rivers saying that instead of copying the Pacers, like how teams in the past wanted to essentially just copy the Golden State Warriors from 2015 to around 2020, that instead of doing that and of following another team's blueprint to a T, they're just going to try and do their own thing with their own guys. But that'll be it now. Thank you very much for tuning into another episode of Bucks Latest presented by Fan Arch. Again, I've been Dean Simon, and before you go, make sure to leave a like, leave a comment down below, tell me what you thought about today's episode, and subscribe. We are now on the road to 2,000 subscribers, and hopefully we can get to that point at some point during the season, because we're going to be having a lot more exciting coverage, some actual game reviews, and we're going to break down the actual on-court product for the Milwaukee Bucks coming up very, very soon, and I'm very excited to do that for you guys. So stick around if that sounds like something you would enjoy. Okay, I'll see you guys in the next one. Go Bucks!